Soraya, it is a pleasure to have you. It is such a pleasure to have you. This is Dawn, our co-host. So scoot on in, and that's your mic.
Oh, okay. Good.
So just roll your chair all the way up.
All right,
into
so
it.
do your introduction, I guess.
So, Soraya, Soraya. I knew I was going to get your name wrong.
No, that's
I haven't
fine.
practiced it on
You're
the phone with
close.
you.
You're close.
Soraya, so you're originally from Sri Lanka, and then you have been here for how many years?
25, 26?
You need to scoot into the mic more so people can hear.
26.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
And you raised your children here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you're Muslim, and you started a wonderful group, Muslim Women Speak.
Yes.
And how long ago did you start that?
That's about, I would say, after 9/11.
So you started that a long time ago. So give us the journey that you started. You started it. Why? What made you want to start that?
I know, I will. I would love to. Thank you for having me.
We're happy. We're so excited to have you.
Do your guests know what happened, that I missed the...
Yeah, we mentioned it, so
Okay,
people were wondering what
good.
was going on. I go, if you've ever had Google or Maps, they don't always send you where you need to go.
Exactly, sometimes. So what happened was, after 9/11, my son was 7 years. He was bullied. He was called a terrorist.
Wow.
Yeah, being Muslim was hard then. And then I practiced law for several years, but after he was born, I was a stay-at-home mom. And then I realized, my goodness, I had to do something about it, you know?
Right.
Like the Jewish people, I don't play victim. I realized there's something I could do. And I befriended a lot of people in my community. And then I met a lot of Jewish people, particularly Jewish friends. And together, I really built a lot of solidarity. And then we did a tremendous amount of work. And it was at that time that I thought Muslim women need to raise their voices, not only against bigotry towards Muslims, but also I found, Jeffrey, that women of faith are always marginalized. They're discriminated.
Doesn't matter what your faith is
Yes,
either.
it doesn't. At the intersection of religion and gender, religion trumped. So then I
Dawn's all, who knew?
Taking notes.
So then I took that path. You know, we're always taking paths, isn't it? We come to a crossroad, there are two paths or three
Right.
sometimes. And then I started really working and calling things out that was not right in my community. If you know, Dr. King always talked about the concept of moral reciprocity. We have to first fix what is broken within. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, and I thought the Muslim world was operating at half steam, and I wanted to raise the voices of women.
Well, it was funny because the first time I spoke to you when I was telling you about our show, and I said, well, you know, Don's half black and half Hispanic, so he's been raised in downtown LA and has had experiences with being prejudiced against and et cetera. And you asked me something, and you said, oh, you're not Jewish, and I go, no, I'm not. And you were very surprised because I, like you and Don and I feel the same way, is that we have to allow people the freedom of speech. That's what our Constitution says. And I think that we're all fighting the same thing to have that voice and that freedom to live in this country. But you just came back from the Abraham Accords. And didn't you land like Tuesday? I think we were texting you like, I just landed from LAX.
Yeah, I know. You know, I just got a call this afternoon. I have to be at Stanford at 12 noon tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
I
Well,
know.
thank you for coming in tonight.
So I have a flight. So my larger message is also to the listeners. The issue of anti-Semitism, the hatred that's pervasive in our country, means that we all have to step up. No matter what your schedule, if you can raise your voice, no matter where, we have to show up. So in that spirit, I came, and of course, I went elsewhere, and I'm here now. Yes, so what happened was, it was the March of the Living. You know, the Jewish people were commemorating the Holocaust. And
I don't know if our listeners know exactly what the March of the Living is. I know what it is. It is the March of the Living from when they were marched to the concentration camps from Poland. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So you did the march while you were there.
Yes. Yes.
What was that like for you?
You know, there are many places you want to go back, but it hurt me so deep. I don't think I want to go back again.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad. You could see, you could feel the smell of death and despair, and it was very sad. But every one of us have to go there at some point in our lives. Because hate, Jeffrey, it begins with a small, like a tiny slot,
Mm-hmm.
and it keeps growing. And then also it gives us a powerful lesson about the silence that we are seeing for the hate that we are witnessing, especially in our own country today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your kids, so from 9/11 your son was called a terrorist, and now that seems the tides, if you watch the media, have changed. Now he's a hero for being Muslim. Is he finding that, or do you find that that's what the media is showing, but that's not really what's going on?
I think Muslims were never victims,
Mm-hmm.
There was misunderstandings, and there's the media always. In this country, as a Muslim, and I don't speak just for myself, there's so many Muslims who agree with me. This is the most beautiful country that we could all live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so my son at that time, he was afraid. On that particular day, I will never forget. I tell this story a lot, but I'll give a brief version. I had parked my car. It was 2 p.m. He was coming out of school, but he was crying that day, So when I lifted the bag and I asked him if everything was all right, my son looks at me and he says, "Mommy, are we terrorists?" And that really broke my heart.
I can't even imagine.
Yes.
How old was he when that?
He was 7 years.
Seven years old.
Can you imagine? No, I can't.
And the saddest part was, he said, "Mommy, the teacher asked if there were any Muslims." He was discussing about terror and Muslims, and he asked if there were any Muslims. And I put my head down and I pretended not to hear. So he didn't want to acknowledge his identity. He was fearful. So then it was my turn to teach him, somebody else's
Right.
opinion of us does not have to be the reality for us. That's what I learned all the time when I was little. And answering your question, so my children never felt like victims, because
Right.
we took very strong steps to show up and to contribute, and I realized early on that I might be from Sri Lanka, but my son was born here. This
Right.
is his home.
Well, see, that's the thing,
Yeah.
is that, people are being pigeonholed for certain things when they're really American citizens.
Yes.
I mean, they're born here. They're American citizens. And that was something that we would speak with David about. David, on my previous radio show, who's on the show after us, Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club, is he said, people want to call me Mexican-American. He goes, I'm an American. My parents were Mexican. My
Right.
grandparents were Mexican, but none of us were born in Mexico. We're American. And,
I mean, it's kind of one of the first things that ends up happening for people that come to this country is right away they notice that there's some grave differences. Like, wait, I can say these things, I can express these things. And for many of us who are here, who are second, third, fourth, fifth generations, it's something that's easily taken for granted. And I think that that's something that's worth defending and fighting for. When you were downstairs, we were talking a little bit about the fact that the schools now have turned into this kind of activist type of, but more of a hostile environment. I think is more the issue, is that here are the kids that should be at a level in their lives that they have constructive criticism, that they can debate, they can have some of the most challenging issues in our universities discussed and ironed out and coming to these types of rational conclusions. But no, we have all this indoctrination that's occurred over the years. And you have professors who just want to just implant ideas as opposed to teach them how to think, not what to think. And I think that's, it's just the culture in these universities has changed. And we can talk forever about why that is. But, going to your story with your son, I mean, at 9/11, I was at Pasadena College. And we had several Muslim classmates. And I remember people looking at particular people it was like the energy was strong. I was just like, wow. And even this gentleman who sat like one row from me to my right, and he came in with a turban. He wore it all the time, and that day was no different. And
you know what? Do Muslims wear that, or is it Indians?
Well, he ended up telling me he was Muslim. I mean,
I believe you, but I always thought it was
because here's the thing.
Sikhs.
Yes, the Sikhs. Are
Is he
they?
a Sikh?
Yeah,
Was he a Sikh?
Yes. So
Sikh.
he is staring down and doesn't even want to look at anybody. He was not that. That was not who he was. And it was a class of philosophy of all things. So
wow,
it was something, and we were always talking about different concepts, and we had a really good instructor where we just kind of got in groups. But anyway, that day it was like everyone was just the energy and the concentration on him, right?
Was intense.
Was pretty intense.
and he's an adult. I can
And
only
he's an
imagine what a
adult. That's what
7-year-old
I'm saying. And a
had to deal
7-year-old.
with.
Yeah. So crazy.
But
The trauma everybody went through. I think everybody can remember where they were when
I was
that
sitting
happened.
in my nail salon, and I had a little TV, and my client came in because I had a 5:30 in the morning client doing nails. She came in and she said one of the towers is on fire in New York, and I'm like, really? Go, let me get my little TV and put it in. It was like little tiny color TV from like the 70s. I plugged it in, and as we plugged it in, we saw the second plane going to the second tower, and I mean, I remember talking about it, but what was interesting for me was that no one I was around ever talked about them being, oh, it was Muslim. We knew it was terrorism at some point, but we didn't really put a religion on it. The community I was in, and I was in a heavily Jewish community.
It seems like the media got really quick to put put a.
But you look at the media though, and this is what's the one thing we're saying? It's the media.
Yeah, the media.
The media has pushed and pushed and pushed. It took me an hour and 15 minutes to meet you downtown, and I'm like, where is this traffic coming from? One of the overpasses, they were flying flags and ceasefire and all this, and people are stopping to read all the signs, and I'm like, they're still stopping traffic. You know, I mean, but.
And Jeffy, you said you were living in a predominantly Jewish
Yeah,
area?
Encino was predominantly Jewish at the time.
I have to make a point here because after October 7th, a group of Muslim women, we went to Israel.
Oh, God,
Yes.
I'm so jealous. I would love to go.
So we met victims' families and we heard stories, and this every story moved us so deeply because let me tell you the story of Mirev. Her mother called her early morning to ask how she was. They were in this kibbutz Be'eri, and she said they had just had a small chit chat as she would with her mother every day, and then the mother said, "Oh, I can hear Arabic voices by my window. I have to go." So she hung up, and then the terrorists showed up at her door, and they asked her, "Who else is here?" And this brave lady, she was 80 years. She said, "Only I'm home," when her husband and her grandson was in the house. And she said, "Only I'm there." So what did the terrorists do? They butchered her. They cut her into pieces. I have to tell this story just to make a point. I will make the point shortly. And then this Mirev, her sister lives also close by. They kidnapped her son, the nephew. And they took him to Gaza, and the other nephew was killed. So here we are now talking to Mirev, asking her how this impacted her and everything. And the Jewish, not the tour guide, but who was in charge, who was taking us, she kept saying, "Oh, the Palestinians did it." And then Mirev said, "No, it is Hamas." Even in that grief, she was able to discern between the Hamas, the terrorists, and the Palestinians. Because today, Palestinians are paying a price, heavy price. So when you said you lived in a community with a lot of Jewish people and you didn't hear any Muslim Islam bashing, that's because they're different, they think different.
Yeah, I mean, even when they started saying it was a terrorist attack, I mean, my salon in 1997 was at Ventura Boulevard and by Balboa, Ventura Balboa in San Fernando Valley. And
1 minute.
At the time, it was just a very large Jewish community that lived in that area. Lovely people. I mean, they enjoyed being a part of all the community. They were always in the community, and they just didn't see it that way. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that people don't understand about that Jewish culture.
They don't know that.
They just don't. I mean, like anything, there's always going to be somebody. It's not just all of them as a group, but there's always going to be somebody. We had a previous guest, Tomer. He's been on a couple of times. He actually was in Israel at the time. He's a very well-known artist here. And he went and worked with Zaka and was in Kibbutzberry.
I see.
So we're going to go to a break, and we're going to be right back. And I'm going to let you pronounce your name.
Soraya.
With Soraya and Dawn. And Jeffy said, what? And we'll be right back to continue your story and hear more about the Abraham Accords and the president that you spoke with.
Thank you.
So we are back, and we're with Soraya. Soraya.
Don't say that.
That's why I didn't want to
Soraya.
do that. And so you had gone to the Paris Accords. I mean, the Abraham Accords in Europe, and you were in Germany as well as Poland.
Yes.
Okay. And so you actually got to speak with the president of the Abraham Accords.
Institute.
The
yes.
Institute. So tell our listeners a little bit about that, because I'd heard about it, but I didn't know anything about it. Dawn, had you heard about it?
I had not heard about it.
Yeah.
And I asked you.
And I didn't
you're
really
like,
know that much about it.
I see. So I think it was in the year 2020, it was President Trump who initiated the Abraham Accords, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner was very active. And I personally, I had reservations about President Trump, but I think he should deserve the Nobel Prize for Peace for the Abraham Accords. It was one of the most comprehensive ways to achieve peace in the Middle East. What the Abraham Accords promised was a new level of diplomacy, a new level of engaging the communities, a new level of exchange of cultures and ideas, a new level of exchanging technology. It was comprehensive. Because Jeffrey, just imagine you and I don't get along, but there is a business that's a startup. Your son and my daughter gets involved.
Right.
We can mend those divides.
Right.
We have to try new ways. And what the Abraham Accord also spelled was that more Arab countries reach out to Israel, normalize relationships. So it was, in fact, it was going to be formalized with Saudi Arabia. We Muslims, we are beholden to Saudi a lot, even though they have not had any very humanitarian policies towards their women in the past. So if Saudi is the leader, because Mecca and the Kaaba and all of that is in Mecca. So Saudi was going to come on board, and then Hamas knew that they were going to get isolated.
Right.
And Iran knew also, because they don't want peace.
Right.
That's the bottom line. They don't want peace. The ethos is corrupt.
Wow.
Yeah, ethos is corrupt. So that is why we feel there is some hope when Hamas is eliminated in a sense and weakened and demilitarized. So what happened was then they launched October 7th. And this war, Jeffrey, we had to be very clear. It was started by Hamas.
Yeah.
So Israel has a right to defend itself. And as a mother, when I see the death toll rise in Palestine, I weep. I don't want that. But what else can Israel do? Israel has to be, I guess, very, very careful. This is urban warfare, because the terrorists are hiding with the people. So it's very complex.
Most people I speak to, I know a few men who are in the military. Tomer, maybe not.
He was a special forces in IDF.
Right. So it's like they get trained on some of them. We would send our own American troops to get trained in urban warfare, right?
Not like Israel does.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. That's basically what they're dealing with on a regular basis, especially right now today. But I couldn't imagine, being in an environment like that and having to try to decipher within a fraction of a second. And,
from my perspective, from the things I've talked, from the people that I've spoken to that actually are knowledgeable about the region, I've gained a lot of knowledge about it. I know literally a speck of dust compared to the whole situation. I don't really know that much, but as I talk to people, I think I know a lot more than the majority of people. I am pro-Israel because I do believe they have a right to defend themselves. I do believe that Israel has done a great deal to try to protect the population of the Palestinian people that aren't supportive of Hamas. But we don't seem to, and when I first spoke to you, you said, if you know someone who is against Hamas, that's Palestinian, that wants to speak up, I want to talk to them. And I keep hearing somebody knows somebody, but I still can't seem to meet anybody, even as someone in the media who has a radio program, to bring someone on to really tell us what's really going on there, what their life is there under the fear of Hamas. Because I do believe there are plenty of people there that are trying to protect their own sons and daughters from death. But when you have the leader of Hamas, who is the number one leader, who celebrates with champagne on social media with his wife that he lost his son, all three of his sons and three of his grandsons in the fight against Israel, how do you sit there and state you're supporting what's going on?
And what is so obvious and what is so egregious is the people who are protesting. They're not calling on Hamas to correct itself.
No.
You know? Not one Palestinian was given entry to the tunnels. It was their money that was used to build those tunnels, miles and miles of tunnels. For whom? For them to start a war and hide. And to really incite so that they could get more donations. And this is what they had been their modus operandi. So nothing for the Palestinians.
Have you seen, I don't know, Dawn, did you see the video last week? I don't know if you did, Soraya, is that they showed a video. They had 18-wheeler trucks coming in to deliver aid, and the Palestinian people were coming out from nowhere to get as much aid as they could, food, water, whatever it was that they needed. And Hamas was chasing them off and shooting them as they ran away. And what they're doing is that they're bringing in the aid that we're paying for that's free to be distributed to the Palestinian people, and Hamas is hoarding it and charging them for it. And there was a gentleman, I don't know, about a month ago, 6 weeks ago on Instagram that did a video and said, this is an aid package and they're selling it to the people when it was supposed to be for free. So I have compassion and empathy for the Palestinian people and their families. I just don't know how you fix it. I mean, when you went to the Abraham Accords, did they address any of that, or how they could better aid the Palestinian people?
So what was discussed at that particular meeting was to advance the Abraham Accords. Now, people like us should talk and call for it and see that it's implemented. And for the Palestinians, unfortunately, this is their generational work. I mean, we all have come. I'm from Sri Lanka. We just ousted the president, 2 years ago. It was people's commitment.
Right.
And if you understand the civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycott, for 1 year they had nothing. It was a David Goliath situation. But those people had something. Do you know what that was, Jeffy or Dan?
No, I don't.
Faith.
They had faith, of course, but they had their feet.
Yeah.
They walked to work.
Yeah.
Wow.
They were coordinated, they collaborated, they were determined. And that's the case study we should all understand at the level of commitment that is needed for social justice. Not just go and cry for death to America. And I mean, it's
and
egregious.
see that, you just hit such a valid point, Soraya, and that is that when they went into UCLA in particular, and they went in and they started cleaning out those tents, they started finding playbooks that were written, and at the back of them it said "Death to America." Yeah. I mean, and they're saying pro-Palestinian, and the thing is, the Palestinian is different than the Hamas, as you just brought up, and Don's got a look on his face.
No, I just I'm putting a lot. I'm trying to put. There's always the things that you know and the things that you just didn't know, and it starts to kind of go and mesh together. I think of Sri Lanka because it wasn't too long ago, right? They had a civil war that happened for it was very long, 30 years, and I think it's like has it been 10 years that they've actually had some sort of peace or something like that? I mean, it's all. Were you there during all this that time? Because there's a certain kind of energy that you carry that not many people have, and I think of it as like, I don't know.
You emanate peace.
There's a peace, exactly. There's this, there you go, you hit it on the head.
You emanate peace. You walk in the room and you're just peace.
Right. And you bring that, and that sometimes takes a lot of processing and meditation. Right? No, really,
I'm laughing because you're a big meditator.
Because you know I'm a big meditator.
That's why I'm laughing. He goes to yoga. He does hot yoga.
Oh, okay. Just tell everything.
And I was going to tell that about you, but you started it now.
I'm going to blow that because you know what? People don't realize yoga came from India, which isn't it part of the Muslim culture? meditation? Is that part of the
In all
Muslim?
religious cultures, there's a prayer could be meditation.
Right. But I mean, yoga and whatever, it's meant for peace.
Yeah.
It's meant for eternal peace.
Inner
Self-realization.
peace. Self-realization.
Self-realization, eternal peace.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought that up, because
Oh, you could say with yoga, one of the things that I think that there are certain emotions or feelings rather that you can pick up on, and you're also a little bit more aware of what energies people are passing to you in energies in the room, and so
I think that relates to your chakras.
maybe. Okay, but the point is, so I wonder how much of that may have, where you're at today and your journey in your own life, and yet you can still go to these areas that are stricken with trauma, and you bring some experience, wisdom to that environment. And I think speaking about it, you speak about it very calmly, and usually I think that people who can speak calmly on things like that have had their own kind of trauma. So I was just wondering, I don't meet a lot of people from Sri Lanka. I actually know one other person from Sri Lanka up the street from my house. She makes wonderful smoothies, man. So I'm going to keep coming. But it's funny. I started talking to her about Sri Lanka, and she was just shocked. She's like, I don't know too many people who even know where Sri Lanka is. So
It's a beautiful place to visit.
yeah. So
Beautiful.
I've seen pictures.
Yes.
yeah.
Beautiful
So-
beaches, small country, manageable, clean, hospitable. Everything is beautiful.
You know what? I think when they had that huge, what was it? I don't want to forget what it's called, when the earthquake, ocean recedes back, and then you had the
Tsunami.
Thank you. I was losing my words there for a minute. When they had the huge tsunami, I think is when people really understood. Oh, Sri Lanka. They knew it from Casablanca, the movie, but I don't think anyone really thought about it.
But Sri Lanka still has, I mean, not to be in the politics of Sri Lanka, but and maybe this is the reason that the president there got ousted, was that it's almost like the country had to start anew, and there was a lot of opportunity. But it seems like those in power took advantage of that opportunity. And they started borrowing money primarily from China, lots of money from China. And China would say, well, that's fine, we'll loan you money, but there's assets that it has to be tied to. So then they were losing their ports to China. They were losing basically their entire infrastructure to China. So I don't know how that's gotten resolved or not, but because they couldn't even make the payments to China. And yet, we're still here, right? Sri Lanka's still there on the map. And despite all this, is still pushing forward.
Yes.
Now, did you move here because of that 30-year war? Is that what brought you to America?
No, I came here to go to school, and then I was like, my son was born 10 years after we got married, and I couldn't have kids. I had some issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So then I stayed on, and, talking about something that you said earlier, when you look at the Jewish people, we have Jewish people from all over the world.
Yes, we do.
But they want a homeland for themselves. Even a bird wants a nest, right?
Right.
A country. Now, even though I'm American, Sri Lankan, I still feel I have a home back home too, So when we say this is our country, we can also have such a close link to our mother country. But our allegiance and our work should center around bringing our country up where we are living. That is very important.
When Tomer had said that, which I wasn't aware of, that when October 7th hit in Israel, it was the only country where people came from literally all over the world, Jewish or not, and said, we will fight for Israel. And you look at that and you go, they only have 15 million people around the world. LA County's got 10 million registered voters, or 10 million people living here.
They don't have that many registered voters, but yes.
They don't have that many. Well, I should know that since I ran for office.
Maybe they do now.
Maybe they do. We're just not really sure. Anyway, but when you think about 10 million people and 15 million Jewish people, 10 million people in LA County. If you just made everybody Jewish in LA County, they'd still be short 5 million people. You know what I mean? And yet the entire world came to support Israel. And I still find it very surprising and shocking when I talk to people that say, well, I feel for the Palestinian people. I'm like, well, nobody doesn't feel for the Palestinian people. We feel for them. They're in a region they have no control over. They were forced to put Hamas into power, but yet what are you supposed to do when they're going in, attacking and doing the things they did to a sovereign country?
Yeah, what is it? What is your perspective on people would say, well, if the Palestinians or the people who were kind of locked in right into this area, Gaza, there was always this, obviously, people were saying things like Egypt should take them in. They should have a little area on the other side of the border where they can protect these people from being caught in the mix of all this. But yet Egypt did not open up their doors. For
Neither
them
did
to
Jordan.
come. Neither did Jordan, right? And so I'm just curious, like these are all, they're brothers, sisters, right? You would think they just say, you talk about having a nest back at home. A lot of these folks are from all different regions of that region, basically. And if this is happening, your neighbors need a place to stay for refuge. You would think temporarily you would. Or were they worried that they maybe never would go back, maybe?
All of that, I think 40% of Jordanians are Palestinians. And when they had given them refuge several years ago, they started an insurrection.
Oh.
The Hamas.
Wow.
So once bitten, twice shy. Nobody wants to deal with them, and it's so unfortunate that Israel has to deal with them.
But so here's the point, though, what you just said. When these other countries bordering Gaza could have let them in, and nobody's talked about the fact that, wait a minute, they said, we don't want them. We don't want them here because we had an insurrection the last time they were here. And everyone has a very short memory that happened. And I remember when it happened.
Oh, you do?
I do remember when they first had, I think it was back before 2005 or something,
Yes,
wasn't it?
yes.
Before 2005, when Israel finally said, we're going to give you all of Gaza. And they went in and they literally ripped their own people, said, you are leaving. And the IDF went in and took them all out of their homes against their will. It was all over the news. It was a big deal.
Dead bodies also.
Yeah. Israel took their people out and said, you are not staying. We are giving this land back to the Palestinians. This is going to be their home. And so, Israel did make a lot of mistakes when they were given back in 1945. They made promises to the Palestinian people that they would cover the cost of their farms and pay them back, that they would make restitution on the lands that they took, and that didn't happen. And I'm sure from my perspective, when I look at it, if I were Israel, having just come out of losing 6 million people in the Holocaust, I don't know that I would have been so trusting either. But I think the Palestinian people feel like they were never righted. And when they were given Gaza, they've held on to the fact they don't feel like they're righted, as far as I know. But we can't interview any of them because no one will come on to talk about it. So we have the Abraham Accords. We have wonderful people like you that start organizations, Muslim women who speak and do God's great work, regardless of whether you're Muslim, Christian, Catholic, Israeli, Jewish, doesn't matter. And what is your perspective on that? How do you see that? Do you think that Israel didn't do enough? What do you think?
I've come to realize, Jeffy, that no matter what, the narratives will change. And what we are doing now is people are arguing narratives.
Right.
I think we need to focus on what can we do now moving forward. First thing I call the college campus students is restore yourselves. This kind of hatred is not helping Gazans. So if we go to that area of, you did this, I did this was it, that's never ending, isn't it?
No, it really is, because it goes into just who do we blame and what do we blame, and you start nitpicking at all the little things, and you don't get down into the core things that are at play that are happening right now.
Well, and that's why I brought up what I brought up, because I believe Israel did do their part to try to make the restitution by giving Gaza over in 2005.
Yes.
And I remember distinctly Arafat standing at the White House with President Clinton, and I forget who the president of Israel was at the time when they were creating that deal.
Rabin.
I remember it was huge in the news. It was peace they never thought was ever going to happen. And here we had that deal got made, and I might have my years mixed up or whatever. I don't think I do. But here you had Israel trying to make that restitution and make that happen. And yet it still wasn't enough. And so when you think it's not enough, how do we actually solve that problem? How do we make that peace happen so that another October 7th doesn't happen? The IDF can pull out of Gaza, we can get our hostages back, and people can find their way back to a peaceful border and life. I mean, how do we get there?
I think, I just came back from Nigeria. When we started working in Nigeria, the religious freedom challenges in Nigeria is very high.
Oh, they have a lot of, there's, I forget how many, tribes, it's and religions that exist in Nigeria's got a lot of people.
Yes. So when we first went there, they were like, "Oh, the Americans are coming. They have a good solution," and we had to tell them, "No, the solution is in your soil with you guys. Work it out." So you asked me, what is a good solution? I love to put it to the Palestinians. What do you want?
There you go.
Yeah.
Such a great question.
Yeah, we are not heard from them. Do you want Hamas to represent you? Wow.
But we are hearing from them, though. We're hearing from them on the campuses of our colleges. We're hearing them when they put themselves into barrels with cement and close down the Golden Gate Bridge. We're hearing from them. But like you just said, what do they want?
We're hearing from people who want to jump on board of some sort of side, any side. And look, a lot of these people, you've said it in other sit downs where it's like, how do they go and march around in support of an organization that would have their head on a platter? It's just that's just kind of just says it. They're as far as LGBTQ. I'm seeing signs with LGBTQ for
Palestine,
and I'm just like, and you're right. They're not educating themselves with with enough truth to decipher the difference between Hamas, Palestine. The real players at play here. And so therefore, they want to generalize. And this is not something to just generalize. This is stuff that's been going on for years, thousands of years.
I think about 15 years ago, I went to UCLA for a MSA, Muslim Students Union meeting. I was sitting there. I was so petrified at the hatred they was talking about America, So this thing that is happening now is long time in the making. And what happened was the Palestinian justice movement, they enlisted students from other communities, the white students, the African Americans, and now the whole thing became a justice issue. And anything Israel, it was evil. No? And suddenly what is happening today is, and Jews are bad. It is okay to have anti-Semitism. It is a legalized right we have.
I just never thought I'd see that day.
I think it's crazy
That's
that
what has happened.
You have even American Jewish people who are on the same sentiments, and they don't
know the history,
and they don't know the history. All they know is that, oh, here we go again. We're going through another one of these situations, and instead of being, informed about it, they just want to go ahead and just say, I'd rather not.
2 minutes.
And I think their propaganda was very efficient, Al Jazeera.
They're so efficient. It's unbelievable.
I know. So that has happened for decades. But I always also hold Israel accountable in the sense to say Israel needs competing virtues now. They say to whom much is given, much is expected. No?
Yeah. Right.
So it has also to escalate its kindness, love, compassion, bring it on,
Right.
Don't just say, okay, we did this, now that cannot be done. No.
Well, I also think that people are very surprised that people like you and I'm not Jewish, you're not Jewish, Don's not Jewish, yet we're supporting the Jewish people.
I'm not shocked about that. I'm kidding.
I'm like, what? But I mean, people are surprised. They go, "Oh, you're not Jewish," and I go, "I'm not Jewish, but I don't need to be Jewish to feel and support people. I would support anybody that were going through a difficult time. I mean, I was raised in a time where if someone's being attacked on the street, you don't just keep walking past. You stop and help, even if it's going to put yourself at risk. And I think that is something that we are not teaching any longer. You're waving your head at me, Don.
Exactly.
No, I'm not waving. How can I wave my head at you? That's
Paul Kessler from Thousand Oaks.
Yes.
He was killed while he was carrying a Israeli flag.
Yes.
Do you recall?
Yes. My horse is down the street from that.
So then I wrote to several Muslim organizations and I said, why aren't you condemning it? Not one person responded.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell my students and participants, whom we train, we are the leaders we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
We need to start condemning it. And as a South Asian Muslim, I feel that only 15% of Muslims are from the Middle East. They have hijacked what Islam is, who a woman should need to be. They have hijacked everything about Islam.
I didn't know that. Only 15%.
Only 15%.
So
of
where
Muslims are from South Asia. Indonesia has the largest Muslim population.
Wow, I'm so uninformed. I had no idea. They have done a brilliant job in brainwashing people to believe that the majority of Muslim have come from the Middle East.
Yes.
Who knew?
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's. Can you believe the show's over?
Oh, it's over.
Yeah, that's our music. I was wow.
Yeah, the live radio portion is over.
Yes, we go into podcast after this, so we can continue chatting after that. But for those of our listeners, thank you for listening to Jeffy Said What, and for always being supportive of our show. We're grateful to have you, and Don, always thank you for supporting it, and to our engineer Ryan, and to the people in the back who make it all happen, and Soraya, thank you so much for being here. And I got your name right. Oh my God, I'm so excited. It's nearly the end of the show. And we're going to have you back because you are someone we want to have back again.
I would love
so
that.
Have a beautiful Mother's Day to you, Soraya, to all the mothers out there on a Mother's Day. Dawn, to your mom, happy Mother's Day. And we'll see you guys all next week.